Hello everyone, it's time for story time again, and this time we're looking at a short story from Battle Technology issue 6. It's the story called Walkover, featuring a Wolverine pilot by the name of Sergeant Simon Lasher. Hope you enjoy. I knew something was up nearly 3 months ago. Sergeant Major Petrilli called B Company together for a briefing on our new training schedule and told us that all leave for the Eridani Lighthorse was cancelled. New training routines aren't unusual, but losing leave time nearly caused a mutiny. The Eridani Lighthorse is a crack unit, one of the best merc outfits going. My own regiment, the 71st Lighthorse, better known as the White Horse, tends to think of itself as the best of the best, though the other two Eridani regiments would dispute that, of course. But crack units need R&R too, you know, and the new regimen of training and drills wasn't leaving us with time enough to catch our breath. Galahad, the brass said. We've got to be sharp for the Galahad summer exercises. We figured it was one hell of a note, training to get in shape for a training exercise. Things got progressively worse too, with inspection after inspection in full kit, maneuvers and deployment drill at any time of day or night, and Class A checks of every mech and piece of equipment in the regiment. Then came the word, all passes are cancelled and stand by for transport. Our orders were to proceed to Ampat Starport for transportation to our next duty assignment. By that time, not one man in our entire outfit had any doubt we were being sent into combat. We just didn't know where. We found out when Brevet General Armstrong himself made the announcement at a full dress inspection of the 71st at the spaceport. "Gentlemen," he said, "you all know that I'm not much for long speeches, so I'll just say it straight out. The Davian-Steiner alliance will be formalized with the wedding on Terra in 1 week. That marriage is going to make a lot of people very unhappy. From Takashi Kirita and Maximilian Liao on down. It's going to mean war. The specific reasons for war don't concern us. We're soldiers, warriors, and even we fight, because that is what we are. The 71st Eridani Lighthorse has been awarded the honor of spearheading the first offensive of this war. You will be fighting side by side with a regular Davian unit, the 3rd Guards. Your destination is the world of Algol, and you'll be facing the 1st Ariana Fusiliers. Your assignment, ladies and gentlemen, is especially important. The 71st will make an ablative drop onto the plains southwest of a city called Groffer's Toll. There's a starport there, an important one. Your orders are to take that port and hold it. I'm not going to lie to you, it won't be easy. There's been a lot of talk circulating about the Fusiliers, about them being a hard-luck unit, easy pickings, a walkover, you might say. Gentlemen, ladies, I want you to disabuse yourself of that notion right now. By the time our dropships deploy for our combat drop, the Fusiliers will have had plenty of time to figure out what we're up to, and they're going to be waiting for us. They will be determined, and very, very tough. I can guarantee you that we're going to be in for a tough fight. But then, that's what the Lighthorse lived for, right?" The question was answered by cheers and a small shower of berets tossed in the air. Training schedules, cancelled leaves, hard work or not, we were ready. "That's it, gentlemen," Armstrong said, smiling. "See you on Algol. Good luck." I had to admire old Armstrong's strategy. Not much for speeches. Yeah, right. I really like the way he snuck that bit in about our opponents, the 1st Ariana Fusiliers. You see, the 1st Fusiliers really is known as the Hard-Luck Regiment. They've been up against Davian line units and mercenaries time after time, and time after time they've been pounded into scrap. My granddaddy fought them on Mirak in 87, and the way he told it, they got hit 6 different times by 6 different units, and by the time that scrap was done, they'd lost better than half of their people and scarcely had a mech still standing. No sooner had we been dismissed from formation than the rumours and stories started flying. Sure, the 1st Ariana was a hard-luck regiment right enough. They'd been broken and reformed so many times they were brittle. Yeah, hit 'em again and they'll shatter. Shatter, hell, they'll take one look at us and run screaming. Morale in the Lighthorse was soaring by the time we boarded ship. But I had to wonder about it. This push was big. Like, real big. Hell, The Federated Suns had been at war for centuries, whatever the history book said about First Succession War and Second Succession War and Third Succession War. It looked like this was going to be labelled the Fourth War, but the Light Horse had been fighting hard enough and often enough that there wasn't a one of us who thought we'd been at peace. But this Algol invasion was something extra special. And if the Scuttlebutt was anything to go by, Algol was going to be just one of 8 or 10 systems hit all at once. A push? Try invasion. Or all-out bloody-minded offensive. Hans Davian was gunning for Max, and he meant serious business. I did not doubt for 1 second that Max Lau and the first Ariana Fusiliers meant business too. The Fusiliers especially. They could read maps, they were combat veterans, and they were as brave and as determined and as stubborn as we were. Wherever their luck had been in the past, it didn't matter. This was going to be a rough one. I stood in the mech bay of the Overlord-class dropship, staring at the mechs in my lance. There was Paul Langley's Vindicator, still bearing the scars on that left torso from the scrape on Demeter. Jacob Engler's Griffin, partly disassembled as he and his techs worked to trace a short in his Delta Dart tracking system. Ted Cermak standing in the open cockpit of his Shadowhawk, joking with the crew chief on the scaffolding that was embracing its neck. Good men. Damn good men, all of them. Below me on the floor of the bay, technicians were unpacking and assembling the big ceramic aluminum ablative capsules which would protect our mechs as we dropped from orbit. As we dropped into history, how many of these brave men and women would still be alive and unharmed by this time tomorrow? Would I even live to see the surface? So many questions ran through my mind. Questions whose answers were as elusive as smoke on the wind. Ask any soldier what the worst part of a battle is. Most will say the waiting. When that waiting must be done inside the bland world of an ablative capsule, it seems to last forever. I could imagine my comrades as they sat and thought or prayed or wept in the lonely confines of their cockpits. It may sound strange for a soldier to admit to such feelings such as fear and sorrow, but soldiers are human beings with the same emotions as civilians. Heroes are just the people who are too scared or cold or tired to care anymore. The dropmaster's voice crackled from the cockpit. 30 seconds to drop point. First string, stand by. Seconds crawled by, then the drop indicator on my Wolverine's panel flashed green, and the gravel voice dropmaster called 3, 2, 1, drop! Suddenly, gut-wrenchingly, my Wolverine was plummeting toward the surface of the planet below. Unable to see, relying only on my sensors and the radio traffic from our fighters, I imagined the swirling chaos outside my capsule as the defending ships fired on our descending forces, while our own aerospace support tried to keep them off us. Soon even radio contact was lost as entry heating ionized the air around my cockpit. Then sunlight flooded in, and the cocoon opened, still hot from entry, splitting apart, leaving my 55-ton machine falling toward the ground like a gigantic skydiver. More fighters flashed past my mech and those of my lancemates. Off to my left, perhaps 300 meters away, I saw a fireball blossom where once was a Davian Shadowhawk. Then another mech died, and a Lao fighter would fall from the sky trailing a long plume of smoke and fire. At 1,000 meters I rolled my mech upright and fired its landing jets. Too fast, my mind screamed as the ground rushed to me. 600 meters. 400. 200. I landed with a bone-jarring crash which I felt must have surely destroyed the mech. As I scanned my status display I could taste blood in my mouth. I'd bitten my tongue on the impact. My MSD showed minor damage to my Wolverine's left foot. Otherwise the big machine was unhurt. Glancing around I saw Engler's Griffin and Langley's Vindicator, but there was no sign of Cermak and his Shadowhawk. Could one of the explosions have been him? Or was he somewhere planetside, thrown off course away from the DZ by the dogfight still raging above? For that matter, where were we? This didn't look like any part of our original drop zone. Somehow, our lance had gotten scattered off the main drop. I keyed in on the regimental command frequency and got a signal bounce from a command support orbiting ship over the DZ. We'd missed the DZ by a whole 10 clicks. The spaceport by 12. We had some hiking ahead of us. We were unable to raise Cermak by radio or transponder, so I formed up the surviving members of the Lance and started for the spaceport. If we were to rejoin the 71st, it'd be there. Before we'd covered the first click, threat warnings flashed on my HUD. Coming in low, skimming the treetops, were a pair of H-7 Warrior attack helicopters. Engler's Griffin sent a salvo of long-range missiles burning toward the incoming hostiles, while Langley brought up his Vindicator's PPC. I raised my own sub-guns-shaped whirlwind autocannon and locked it onto the lead chopper. It's impossible to describe the weird half-human, half-mechanical sighing noise made by the whirlwind, but once you hear it, you never forget. The sound still raises my hackles every time. White fire blazed into the enemy formation, most of Engler's missiles smashing into the twin coaxial rotors of the trailing Warrior, causing the 20-ton machine to blossom flame, then arc over in a twisting, splintering fall, which carried it behind the swell of a low hill. My AC burst struck home on the lead helicopter, making the VTOL lurch sideways. Fire flashed from the surviving gunship's nose and flared from its stubby wings. 3 short-range missiles hammered my Wolverine while 30mm hypervelocity rounds chewed up the ground around me. Langley fired his particle cannon, the man-made lightning slagging the aircraft's armour and burned into the airframe. The Warrior's engine cowling shattered as the VTOLs engulfed in fire. Engler had his rifle-like Fusagon particle cannon at the ready and was scanning the horizon for any sign of the line defenders. "You okay, Sarge?" Langley asked. "Yeah, Paul, I'm fine. I took some damage to my left torso and arm, but my arm is still intact. Are you guys alright?" "No damage here, Sarge," was Langley's reprise. "I'm intact too," Engler said. Alright, I studied my TAC readouts, assessing the data unfolding on the computer-imaged map display. "Listen up, we're late for rendezvous and we're off target. We got some travelling to do, so we better get moving. Langley, you take point, make your best speed, but don't get too far ahead. I make our destination at 073 degrees, about 12 clicks. Keep your eyes open, boys, we're a long way from Groffer's Toll. I'd rather not get my actuator shot off trying to get there." Now, 12 kilometers doesn't sound like much, especially when you're talking about machines which can cover nearly any terrain at a better average than 60 kph, but when you're in unfamiliar, enemy-held territory, 12 clicks can seem like 800. It took us nearly half an hour to cover that short distance. We could see the fight before we ever reached it. A pall of murky smoke was spreading across the sky from just beyond a low, rugged ridgeline. "Okay, boys," I addressed my lance as I studied the map display. "Groffer's Toll spaceport should be on the other side of that ridge. Langley, hustle up there and take a look-see." The young mech warrior moved his 45-ton mech up the hill, dodging from cover to cover as lightly as any infantryman. "Sarge, Jacob, get up here!" Langley screamed over the comlink, his voice tinged with fear. Without a moment's hesitation, I started pounding up the slight incline as fast as the Wolverine would go, with Engler's Griffin right on my heel. As I topped the rise, I caught sight of what had thrown Langley into a panic. Below us was the spaceport, a sprawl of dingy buildings and acres of tarmac stretching out clear across the floor of a low bowl-shaped valley. There were ships, aged merchanters, most of them, but nothing that looked military. The smoke was coming from junked mechs scattered across the tarmac. It was a wild melee as I'd ever seen. Mech against mech in pounding, slashing, burning, up-close combat that was claiming more casualties on both sides of every passing minute. The numbers looked about even, but it was impossible to tell through the swirl of battle machines and smoke and rising dust. Langley began to raise his PPC and I stopped him. "Hold it a second, Paul." It looked to me as though our boys had snapped an ambush on the loud mechs. Despite the confusion and the smoke, I could see the regimental colours of the 1st Ariana on more of the mechs, crowded toward the centre of the mess, with Eridani light horse closing in from 3 different sides. The 4th was to the east of the spaceport, near a broad defile for a ridgeline. The Lao mechs must have come through there, spreading across the spaceport tarmac, then they'd been hit by an Eridani counterattack. If things got tough for the Lao mechs, that defile would be their line of retreat. "Let's back down the hill," I said. "We'll circle around to the north and hit him from the back." Moving as quickly as we dared, the 3 of us backed off until we were out of sight of the brawling mechs. I knew that if we were going to turn the tide of this battle, we couldn't waste any time. Our quarter circle took us about half a click north and a full click east. The defile would be guarded, I was sure of that. The Lao forces wouldn't want anyone sneaking up on them from the rear. We came down the pass in a wedge formation, with Langley in the centre and Engler and me to the left and right. As we neared the opening of the pass, we could see a pair of heavy mechs, a tall Crusader, and the odd, nearly headless shape of a Thunderbolt. The odds weren't good. We had the advantage in numbers with 3-2, but the tonnage was near even. My Wolverine already carried some damage, and I expended AC munitions in the fight with the warriors, while these two guarding the pass looked fresh. Those heavies could absorb a lot more damage than our mediums. Our one hope here was to take them by surprise. Get in as close as you can before you open up, I instructed the team. Paul, you take the Crusader. Jacob, you and I will hit the Thunderbolt. Make your first shots count, boys. We may not get any more. At my signal, we started forwards at top speed. I watched the rangefinder ticking off the distance to the target. Don't turn around, I said aloud as though the Laumex would hear me. Don't turn around, just stay there. Don't turn around. I'd hoped we could get closer with about 270 meters, effective range for our medium lasers and short-range missiles, but luck was against us there. The rangefinder had just flashed up 360 meters when another mech entered the pass. Curse the luck. A 50-tonner, a trebuchet. Its pilot must have shouted warning when he saw us because the two heavies turned and then, tracking our approach, the Treb lifted its arm, aiming its wrist-mounted Zeus long-range missile pack at us. Fire! I yelled, fire! Simultaneously, two particle streams and a burst of autocannon fire clawed out at the Laumex. At the same instant, the Capellan pilot fired the wrist-mounted missiles and the identical pack mounted in the left torso of the trebuchet. Smoke, fire, and flying rock obscured view of the target as all three of our shots went wide, leaving the Laumex untouched. One of his volleys flew over our heads, detonating along the valley behind us. The other showered Paul Langley's Vindicator with dirt and shrapnel, but a few must have found their way inside. I'm hit. It's not too bad, but he perforated my torso armor. Wait a minute. Damn it, he took out my LRMs. Boss, I think we really stepped in it this time, Engler called. Shut up and fight! The Thunderbolt cut loose of all three of its torso-mounted lasers. I weaved left, returning fire, Engler raising his Griffin's PPC, sending a bolt sizzling into the Thunderbolt's left arm, following up with a cluster of LRMs. Langley triggered his own PPC at the trench bucket and launched his Vindicator into a lumbering charge. I cut loose with my Wolverine's autocannon, spewing 50mm armor-piercing explosive rounds into the Capellan mech's legs. Langley, he was trying to close the distance to 180 of the trebuchet, where he could have had the advantage. The dead zone of Halau's LRM systems meant it couldn't hit him. Engler and I could only position our mechs far apart, so the Thunderbolt could only target one of us at a time. After raking the 65-ton monster with more AC fire, I urged my mech into a ponderous run. At that range, I was at a severe disadvantage. Neither my SRM rack nor any medium laser could effectively lock onto a target at greater than 270, and without that added firepower, we would have been hard-pressed to destroy a Capellan Thunderbolt. The crash, crash, crash of LRM fire thundered across the valley. I chanced to look and saw Paul Langley's Vindicator down, gouges chewed across his right arm and side. He had his mech levered up on its left arm and was trading shot for shot with the Crusader with his PPC. The damage to Paul's mech looked bad, but I couldn't help him. A trio of bright flashes lit the Thunderbolt's left torso as the Lau pilot fired his lasers again, one shot burning into my Wolverine's right leg, another its already savage left arm. The third scorched into the ground beside me. My return fire went wild, sending gouts of earth geysering into the air. When the big mech pivoted to fire at me, it turned away from Engler's Griffin. My comrade's PPC shot burned a hole in the Thunderbolt's right arm, while his full complement of missiles hammered the Capellan's right leg and torso. A shattering explosion blasted smoke and flame and debris into the sky, sending twisted chunks of metal rattling against my armor like machine gun fire. The explosion was followed by another, deep-throated and rumbling, and the blast wave knocked my Wolverine to its knees. God almighty, Engler said over the cockpit. His missiles had found a weak spot in the Thunderbolt's armor and detonated the SRM ammo. The big mech was a wreck, gutted by the blast and burning furiously. I had my mech on its feet, intending to aid Langley. Too late. The battle, our part of it at least, was over. The Lau trebuchet lay on its side, a smoking ruin where its left leg used to be, and a gaping hole in its torso. But Paul's Vindicator was sprawled in the dirt, most of its head and right shoulder missing. Wires and coolant conduits spilled from the hole, and oily smoke was adding to the inky overcast of battle smearing the heavens. We found out later from his onboard recorder that his LRM stores had blown at almost the same instant as the Thunderbolt. His mech had overheated, and he'd been unable to override or damp down. He should have been able to eject, but he hadn't. Maybe the Crusader was pushing too close, or maybe he hadn't noticed in the excitement. Who knows? Just damn bad luck. The Crusader had pulled back towards the main battle, unwilling to face the odds of 2-on-1. Engler and I charged out onto the tarmac to find the Capellan mechs were already crowding back away from the valley's mouth. "Lasher, where the devil have you people been?" Our company commander yelled over the link. "What the hell are you doing way over there?" "Sorry, sir," I was too tired to explain. "We just got a little lost, that's all. Better late than never, I suppose," he grumbled. Static from a PPC blast hissed in my helmet phones, cutting the conversation for a second or two. "Join in," he said when the air was clear. "There's still one hell of a plenty to do." He clicked over to the general frequency. "Attention, the 71st will advance. Open line, B company, front rank, oblique left, hype." Plenty to do was right. Our rival had plugged the hole in the Lao rear, and I guess our arrival had convinced them that they were surrounded. The Hard Luck Regiment had its back to the wall now, cut off, surrounded, and dying as mech after mech crashed into fiery ruin. The Eridani light horse surged forward from all sides, squeezing them together into the junkyard tangle at the centre of the spacefield tarmac. It took 5 bloody hours of slaughter and heat and dying to finish the fight for Groffa's Toll. Not many of the Ariana people broke through our lines, and fewer still got out with their mechs intact. The press called it an easy victory. They said we suffered only light casualties, that securing the spaceport was a stroke of tactical genius, striking where the enemy was weakest. To hear them talk, the battle was a foregone conclusion. A walkover. After all, Groffa's Toll pitted the Eridani light horse against the Hard Luck Regiment itself, right? Hell, I was there. And I can tell you that the victory had little to do with luck. The light horse had suckered them deliberately, bypassing their positions when a scattered drop caught them looking in the wrong direction. The light horse made straight for the spaceport instead of the Capellan rear. The Fusiliers regrouped and came on hell for leather, straight into an ambush set by our tanks and infantry. They were already hurting by the time they reached the spaceport and found it deserted. Our boys had circled around, redeployed, and then hit them just when they thought they'd chased us off. My lance had arrived on the scene just after the light horse had hit them. Walkover. Ha! Asked Ted Cermak. They found the ruin of his mech after the fight, scattered across a couple of square kilometres near the drop zone. Or asked Paul Langley. We salvaged his mech, but there wasn't enough of him left to identify, much less bury. My lance had been cut in half. That's 50% casualties, whatever the news media might say. Ask the pilots of that Trebuchet or that Thunderbolt, dead in the burned out wreckage of their mechs. They gave everything they had to hold open a line of retreat for their comrades, and died in the giving. I don't hold Paul's death against them. They fought, and we fought, and we shared the luck. Good and bad. At that, it was a close thing. If Engler's missiles hadn't penetrated the Thunderbolt's torso armor at just the same time that Paul's Vindicator blew, seems to me that luck, good and bad, was favouring both sides pretty evenly. But if the final measure went against the Fusiliers, it wasn't because they were a walkover. "Form up, people," the captain said. We'd come through pretty well. All in all, 8 of the company's mechs were still reporting for duty, and 5 of them weren't even too badly shot up. In the distance, other mechs of the Light Horse were already picking through the ruins, marking wrecks for salvage and checking for traps. Way off to the north, we could hear the rumbling thunder of heavy fighting going on somewhere over the horizon. Exhaustion dragged at me. After 5 hours of fighting, it was hard to realise I was still alive. "Form up," the captain repeated. "Come on, look like soldiers. We've got a war to win." A war to win. I looked over the field of ruined machines and shattered lives and wondered if any of us would live to see that victory. If the 1st Ariana Fusiliers had been a hard luck regiment, I didn't want to run into any Capellan units which considered themselves to be lucky.